Welcome back, hockey fans. Jets Fantasy Field Podcast. We got Blair in the air.
Keith McKnight here.
We're going to jump right into things here. We have a few signings, recent signings there. Neil Pionk, 2-year, $6 million deal. He scored 6 goals, 20 assists last year, I believe, 73 games. Huge upside. How do you feel about the contract lengthwise? I feel like what we traded away from him, we could have maybe signed for a longer contract. I feel like he is a player that will get better on the defense end. He's super good on the power play. His upside's crazy. He's a right-handed shot. Probably one of our better right-handed shots coming up for rookie-wise. I would have been safer with a longer contract, but maybe it's a prove-it contract, and if you can do it, we'll pay you a little more money, but $3 million as well for what he's doing is a little hefty. I would have liked to see that on a 1-year deal at maybe a 3 or 4, and then instead of the 2-year, because it's going to happen within this next year if he can prove it or not. Or we should have just done a 5-year, $4 million contract where he's going to be worth in 2-3 years. He's going to be worth that $5-6 million, hoping he turns out panning.
Yeah, if he pans out, and he's already going to be touted to step up on the Jets' blue line, which is kind of already leaned out with the departure of Tyler Myers, losing him to free agency to the Vancouver Canucks. So his workload is definitely going to be there. The opportunities for him to show Coach Maurice and the Winnipeg Jets coaching staff that, hey, I can hold my own here in the NHL, especially on the blue line with the Jets as a full-time player. And you said 73 games, 26 goals. I mean, he spent some time between the AHL and the NHL, and he proved that he could play.
Well, 26 points in 73 games.
Sorry, 26 points in total, similar. Yes.
Yeah, that was just last year. He has a total of actually about 40 points in just over 100 games. So, every other game kind of point player, and I feel like he's going to have more of a role this season. So maybe, what do you think point-wise he'll reach this year?
I think he might get close to the 50-point mark.
Yeah,
I think he might get close to 30-something assists and may hit the 20-goal mark.
Yeah.
So
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that production too, especially coming in from New York where he was working his way up.
Yeah.
So
as a low though, I would like him to at least get 40 points. With his contract, it's got to be at least 40 points. And
that's some money there. Yeah, an annual average of $3 million when you say a 2-year deal, right?
Yeah, and a higher ceiling of about 50 points. If he gets more than that, I think this, should have signed him to a longer contract. But we'll see what happens, right? Like with the coaching and whatnot. See what opportunities he gets this year. But pretty excited for that signing.
I agree with you 100%. It's a good signing. I'm excited to see how he's going to grow within the Jets organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's been on my radar for a while, so happy to have him on the team. Absolute. I don't know if this year will be the year that he can replace Trouba's 50 points, but someone else will have to step up as well. There's going to be a few players that have to step up. Next contract, Cop did go to the hearing there.
Yes. He was awarded, I'm not sure what the numbers were, but through arbitration. It was an interesting deal how that happened, but it's nice to still see him here with the Winnipeg Jets. I'm sure you have the info there.
Yeah, like a 2-year, $4.56 million, so a 2.28 a year. I was pretty surprised with the number. I thought it would have been closer to the 3, especially going to the meeting, but I feel like he might have got offered more before they went to the meeting, and you win some, you lose some kind of thing. But again, as a young player, having just a 2-year contract, it's like I'm not sure if they want him around for the future or whatever. But potentially, if they didn't, they should have still signed him to a 5-6 year, and then if they didn't want him or couldn't afford him in a couple of years, trade him. You can't we lose so many players to free agency because we're signing them for how much long we need them. It's like, at one point, you as an organization want to have that player trust that you're not just gonna, as soon as you sign them there, you're gonna trade them the next day. Obviously, there is a few trust issues with no movement. Wheeler's very few teams he wants to go to, and Buffalo too. So it's I feel like there isn't that trust already. So why do these contracts if you don't have the trust ready? Let's just sign them to what we need and look after our backs, because Kopp's a player down the road that I think we would have kept the whole 5. I know they wouldn't have given him a 7-8 year contract, but a 4 or 5 would have been, I feel like, a little more healthy, especially if they're only giving him 2 point whatever a year.
And I think he would be happy with that, a 4 or 5 year deal anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, watching him in morning skates, when he first started getting called up, especially getting sent back down to the Moose, it seemed like he had a lot to prove. And I don't mean that in the sense of him having a chip on his shoulder, where having a lot to prove sometimes seems like it's a bad thing. But, he would be there in the morning skates, and he's like, look, I know I can play at this level. I can do this. And he earned his way. I think it's a great signing for the Jets to keep him into the organization very long term. It seems like the ownership really does like him. I mean that on a personal level, and it shows. And I really would like to see. I'd like to see. When you say a 4 or 5 year deal, they probably. Yeah, you're right. They wouldn't give him a 7 to 8 year deal, but I think he would be happy with a 4 or 5 year deal.
Yeah, it was a bit surprising. I thought it would have, and especially if he's signing for only that amount, it's like maybe he didn't want to do that because maybe in a couple of years he'll be worth more, and they weren't willing to meet that 3 mil kind of mark for that long. So maybe it is another tested out kind of contract. But I think at this point with where the team's at, it's like there's certain players we have to identify to rebuild around. And I feel like Kopp would have been a safe third line center to keep for the next 5 years. So when those 2 years are up and we're paying him $4 or $5 million, we're gonna look back and be like,
what do we do here?
Should have signed him a little longer. But you never know, like the both sides of the story. But at the end of the day, 2 years of Kopp more is I'm happy with it.
I'm happy too. I'm sure the city will be happy with it. He has the fans like Andrew Kopp. He works hard. That's the one thing I can always say about him.
Yeah.
And then they ended up signing their draft pick.
Yeah.
Villa Hinola. So that was a big deal. Another
Ville.
young man from Ville from Finland.
Yeah.
So the continuation of the Winnipeg Jets sticking with Finland is still there.
Yeah, and he signed for a little more than what a lot of the entry-level contracts are. Right around probably the most he could get for the contract and the bonuses. So obviously he's the real deal. Like, I'm feeling good about this. Obviously he's going to be more motivated knowing the organization totally believes in him. And I think we're going to see him sooner than later. I'd like him to develop for another year at least, but we could probably start seeing him as early as next year.
Yeah, in a couple of games, maybe a little bit before the All-Star break.
Yeah.
And right before, towards the end of the regular season as well, before that playoff push.
Yeah,
right?
It depends how his year goes over there. I'm worried about the size, so I'd like him to get a little bigger, just because I don't want him to play and potentially get injured. Obviously, they're not going to get him to the 10 game mark because they don't want to waste one of the entry-level years on that, but that being said, it's we'll see what happens with it. It would be nice to see him out a couple games.
Certainly would. Yeah, those 3 signings are big. I do recall you bringing up the signing of Christian Vesalainen. I'm not sure if you had the economics and the numbers of his contract there.
It was a little less than what
they were getting.
Ville signed for. So
yeah, another Finnish superstar as well.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, they see something special in him, so I'm pretty excited with that contract.
He's got some size to him, seeing him be like, at the glass level there in the morning skates last season. I'm like, whoa, this is a pretty big guy. In the sense of instead of sorry, what I mean by size, not in the sense of physical stature, but in the sense of height. I'm like, oh, he's almost as big as Adam Lowry.
Yeah, once he starts filling out, like I said, like last episode we were talking about. The starting lineup, so I definitely have him on the starting lineup this year, and he's going to take a big step this year. And just a really good skater. He can play that physical game. He's everything that the Jets are looking for in a player. So it's going to be a really good year. He's going to obviously start on probably the 4th line and maybe work his way up, but they got to surround him with people to make his game a little better. People you can trust. That's why I had Lowry on the 4th line with him, just to maybe a little protection and a little support there as well. If you're winning, Lowry, pretty good draw man too, so if you're having possession most of the time, I want to see what he can do. I haven't seen much of his defensive game. I think that is an area that they want to work on with him, obviously with every rookie, but I think his offense skills are there, and it's going to be fun to watch him this year, for sure.
Yeah, and it was really nice to see him last year, and unfortunately, it didn't really work out with him being a consistent player, but another player that the team likes, you can tell that the team likes him.
Yeah.
Since we're on the topic with a couple of these defensemen who are also getting their contracts renewed, we were talking about long-term.
Yeah.
I think that one of the reasons, too, these guys might not be getting the long-term deals that we think they deserve, I think there's a lot of faith in Logan Stanley and Tucker Pullman.
Yeah.
And Logan Stanley, I know a lot of people, a lot of sports writers within the city thought this kid was a bust. But what they needed to understand, he may be a bust right now.
Yeah.
That's okay. And let him develop in the A as a defenseman. And him and Tucker Poolman, I think if you put those two guys on the blue line, let alone be in a power play or at full strength, I mean, you can rely heavily on those two guys to protect.
Oh yeah, for protection wise, it's just there's just with the contracts this year. I don't think like obviously if a few injuries happen, there'll be more opportunity for them to come in.
Yeah.
But I feel like Poolman's a little more ready
than Logan Stanley right now.
Yeah, but obviously, but if you look at their upside, the ceiling that Stanley has is ridiculous. So it's going to be
big.
Yeah, and the step he took this year, like this was the first year where everyone's like, okay, I understand this pick. Like I remember when that draft was happening, everyone's like just waiting to see who would pick this dude, and everyone was kind of laughing when Winnipeg picked him. It was like, you guys are stuck with him, but if he can come through, it's his ceiling is going to be super high. He's going to be the next, Myers. I'm not going to compare him to Hedman, but one of the bigger boys, maybe a Chara a couple years ago.
And I hate to bring emotions into the check of this podcast and roster departures, but super sad to see Tyler Myers leave the organization. Somebody that I feel that could have been easily a future Winnipeg Jets captain. Easily.
Yeah, he stepped up in playoffs. It's going to be hard to see him go. I feel like even, last year playoffs and this year playoffs, when people weren't showing up, he was about one of the only players that would step up, show up. His offense skills are there. It was hard to see him go for the money he went for, but at the same time, I think Winnipeg would have more so leaned towards a 3 or 4 year. I don't know how that 5th year is going to work out in Vancouver. I think that's why he signed there, to guarantee that. But he's got another 3 or 4 years left in him, absolutely. And people build like that. They got bigger bones. They last longer. Char's 40, or I don't know. He's old.
And they just signed him to another 2-year deal for for 2 years, right? So he got a little bit more. He's got some more in the tank to go.
Yeah, they only paid him $5 million last year, and he was doing his thing as well.
And he's clearly a guy who plays to win.
Yeah.
He does not play for money. Money's a huge bonus for Chara, but he plays to win.
At least he's not in the Central, Myers, so we don't have to play him now. There's just certain players you don't want to play against. You'd rather them on your team.
And you can't blame Chevy for sending him to a team or orchestrating a deal that they don't have to see him so much in the conferences, right? And that's... in the conferences, they're still the same, but I mean in the division, they don't have to play them nearly half as much.
Yeah, that too. But it would have been nice to even sign him and maybe trade him for some picks on that 3rd or 4th year. If they didn't want to keep him for the full 5, we could have traded him the last 2 years.
Because it's all about draft picks now.
Yeah, and with how many teams are trading their draft picks, if we signed Myers and traded him in the 4th or 5th year in that contract, we could have at least got a 2nd round, if not a 1st round for him. So it's a little tough to see pieces like that go, but again, it's obviously building that trust for the players and that we're not just signing them to trade them. So shout out to Chevy for getting all of that trust. But signings though, while we're talking about it, not that important. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal this year. Mark Letestu.
Yes. That was another guy that slipped my mind there. That 1-year deal, they brought him in, right? Mm-hmm. And you said he ripped up the AHL, so if he finds that consistency here now. Yeah, and he did play a few games for Columbus last year, but he did get sent down because, obviously with them bringing in Duchesne, DeZingle, they didn't have room for him anymore, so it just made sense that he moved down. But he's one of those players who's always been on and off for Edmonton. He's not very consistent, but when he's playing, he's good. And to pay him $700K to potentially, with injuries, move into your lineup, I think it's a really good signing for the price. It's kind of a gamble, but you're not losing anything. Your AHL team is going to benefit from it. Your fans that watch both the Moose and Jets will like it too. So it'll be nice to see if he gets an opportunity this year, and he's got nothing to lose. So I want to see what he can do for sure. Yeah, it'll be nice. Yeah, we're just very our center depth is pretty decent. It's come to the point where it's Little is the 4th string. I think I do have Lowry, Scheifele ahead of him. It depends if Roslovic is going to play. Obviously, Kopp's ahead of him, but Little being the 4th string has injury problems where he could move into that spot.
I have Lowry on that line only to protect Vasilinen, but he's not my fourth string. I just want to make that sure.
Okay,
We're
let
coming
that out there, yeah.
Yeah, coming to the end of segment 1. We'll be right back for segment 2.
Yeah, we're going to take a break here.
All right, welcome back to segment 2 of the Jets Fantasy Fuel podcast. We're going to juice right into the Connor and Laine contracts. Some pretty interesting debates here. I know it's on everyone's mind. It could go either way. Obviously, it's around the league, it seems to be the going theme that I think everyone's waiting for each other to see what they're going to sign for with the Marner, with the Rantanen, before they make the first move. It's hard to make the first move, and if you sign him for too much, it's going to put up that price, and everyone's just going to, follow suit. So I guess we'll talk about Laine's contract first.
Yes. He's got 3 years, just under $11 million here, with a cap hit of $925,000 per year, with an annual average of $3,575,000. So, I mean, just getting under 3.5 million a year is pretty good for him. But, it's a significant jump for the same amount of time from Kyle Connor. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're talking about $11 million here, and Kyle Connor is not even getting $5.5 million. And Kyle Connor's had a breakout season last year. I mean, this kid was showing that he could play on the first line, let alone the second line. Like, he can play. But, we'll get to Kyle Connor in a second. But
yeah.
Patrick Laine's contract, for that much, for 3 years, just almost $11 million. That's pretty hefty for him. And has he lived up to it?
I would say so for the amount of goals he's got for that entry-level contract. It's nice. 36, 44. Like, he's, dropped down a bit this year. When he scored that 18 goals in November, it was looking pretty promising, and there was only 9 goals after December, so it kind of fell out a bit. But I think it comes down to what you're doing, how you're contributing when you're not scoring. He wasn't playing the best of D. He wasn't hitting. He wasn't being as physical. It's when you're not scoring and things aren't going to the net. I think he still has to find a way to contribute to the team, and that's why everyone was taunting his play last year. It wasn't necessarily that he wasn't scoring. It was he wasn't getting into the games. It looked like he was just floating around there. If he's hitting, if he's engaged in these games, he's going to be scoring. He's going to get mad. I know I play better when I'm mad.
It seemed this year he was just kind of waiting to be set up for shots, mm-hmm. more so than, being physical on the back check, attacking guys in the boards, and, trying to, protect the puck a little bit more. He just seemed like he was just looking for his shots this year.
Yeah.
And when he got those shots, yes, like you said, those 18 goals, yes, he got pretty hot, but he couldn't find the back of the net that much towards, once we moved on from that stage.
And it might have been the whole setup thing. I think he's still learning where to set up. I know Ovi has it down where everyone knows the pass is coming. We're waiting for it, and the goalie is definitely not waiting for it. But it goes in every time. And once he finds his spot, I think it's like he's probably about a half foot off. Once he gets basically that spot, it's gonna be scary. And that's why I want to lead into an 8-year contract. If we're lucky he had a bad year. Not a bad year. How is scoring more than 30 goals a bad year? Our standards are so high for him that it's so exciting that we think scoring 30 goals, more than 30 goals, is a bad year. It's not. People don't do that. There's only a few players that can actually do that. So it's somebody we got to keep. He's huge with the upside. I think the way they're going is, sign him for a year or two and give him, $8 or $9 mil a year and let him prove himself. He could sign upwards if the cap keeps going up. If that 2-year contract plays out, he could sign for up to 12 or 13 mil if he hits his target, and even more. I think Ovi got 13 and a half. I'm not sure. He's getting paid.
Yeah, he's getting paid. Yeah.
Yeah, but benefits though of the long-term contract. If we're doing a long-term contract, I think it would be about you would pay more a year. It would be a 10 mil for about 8 years. But at the end of the year, when 2-3 years comes from now, we're not giving him the 13. We're giving him the 10. We're locking him up in there. So I think it's a safe bet. Obviously, if it doesn't work out down the road, you could get a haul back for him. But his upside, his physicality, it's just a no-brainer that that's someone you build the team around. He's our highest draft pick, I think, ever.
Ever, yep.
So we can't get rid of that. And we're not. Why would you sign a 2 year at a chance that, he's not happy here, or the fans are giving him a hard time, where he doesn't end up liking it. And even if we offer him the 11, 12 mil or 13 in 2 years when he deserves it, he might not want to play here. We got to lock this guy up. And I don't care what we got to pay him, what we got to move around. He's one of the players we got to build the team around. So if we got to dish out the 10 mil that might take a hitter, this year and next year, it will eventually play into we're paying him 10 mil instead of 13, 12 in a couple years. So having that extra couple mil is going to be pretty handy with the cap. So he's a player we got to definitely lock up.
So he's definitely deserving of what they pay him. And yeah, if he keeps playing the way he plays, and he has like the ceiling for him, and I mean that's another guy you can look at too. It's just it's limitless.
Yeah, and the whole pressure thing too. I think this year was the whole he's on the last year of his entry level contract, so he was feeling a little pressured to do what he needed to do to make the money, and I think that got in the back of his head to the point where he's like, after the hot streak he had and he couldn't get it going again, he couldn't find ways to get back into the game. So I think that just comes with age and maturity. So next year will be better for sure. It has to be for sure. If the team around him isn't as good either, he's one of those players where if he's in that spot, he's scoring. So I'm feeling good about it. What would you do though? I have 8 year 10 mil, or the 1 or 2 years for 8 or 9 a year.
I like the long-term deal with him. When you say he's a guy that you got to build a team around, I agree with that. I mean, like you said, they drafted him the highest draft pick that they've had since they've been in the organization back in Winnipeg. Mm-hmm. I think that he's I know I'm going to take a lot of heat for saying this, but he would be on my list higher to build a team around than Mark Scheifele would be. Mm-hmm. May not seem like that right now, but I just think that Laine is just going to be more of a superstar than Mark Scheifele.
Well, they're not in the same league. You got Scheifele, who took to age 26 to gain that extra 15 pounds and start getting that shot down. Now that he has a shot, that's fine, but he's already 27. That means when players are supposed to peak when they're 24. Laine hasn't even hit his peak yet. That's the scary thing.
When you really break down the numbers like that, right? He's only like 20 years old now.
When Laine's 27, he's going to have way more goals than Scheifele will ever score in his career. So I don't think they're in the same league.
Yeah, I think why I have him on such a pedestal is because how much Scheifele's loved here. Yeah. So it's just like, I think that, the way that the enigma of it is really coming into play for me, how the city likes Mark Scheifele. So yeah, because to me, the way the city has him, it's like I have him up there too. Yeah. But Laine, I think, is just way more.
His ceiling, it's unknown right now. That's why it's like you get into the 13 mil contract when we don't know. If he's scoring 50 goals every year, like he should, as in he hits his ceiling, it's going to be scary. And I don't think you can compare a player like Scheifele. For one, Laine is a wing, Scheifele's a center. So you have that aspect that, he's maybe, playing a little more defense, so he's using a little more energy on that. And what happens if Wheeler starts slowing down? Is that going to affect Scheifele's production? Absolutely. They're bros. Like, they're really good out there. They're really fun to watch. Probably one of the best duos, I would say, in the league right now. But Wheeler's over 30. Scheifele, 27, I think. I think they only have a couple years left of that. So, that's why we got to sign the Laine. We got to build the team around him. And Connor, obviously. Let's jump into Connor's contract.
I mean, breakout season last year. Made headlines all over every news station, every SportsCenter report. It was all about Kyle Connor. Earned himself a nice nickname beyond big contract, KFC. We're not going to get into what that stands for, but Kyle Connor, he's making headlines. Run the numbers there for him about his contract, please, Blair.
Yeah, I'm not going to call him Dirty Bird, but 34 goals, 32 assists in 82 games last year. He's playing healthy. I think he's, like, you can see he's not going to get injured too often. He basically, how do I put this in a whole? He's our best player, I would say, like, right now. Obviously, Laine has something else he brings to the table, but as an overall player with the backhand, what he brings to the table, his work ethic, that second year to the third year jump was ridiculous. We all knew he had it in the second year, but with getting the ice time and putting on like a little more weight, he has become this unstoppable player. He's a beauty to watch there. His shooting percentage in playoffs is over 20%. We want him shooting more.
So fast.
15% during the season this year. If you're getting players that are shooting 20%, 22 in the year, they usually drop down to 12 or 15 or 10. It's a fluky. It's their career year. He is a consistent 15% shooter. So if he can get up to like even the 20% like one year, it's going to be crazy that he'll get into the 40 goal mark. He just needs to be surrounded with a good line. So I do want him on the Scheifele Wheeler line. Contracts. What would you sign him to?
I mean, right now he's got himself locked into a 3 year, 3 years, $5,325,000 deal at an annual average of $1,775,000. Now, if you're talking what type of extension I would give to him, this is a guy I think I would look past a 5-year deal. He's another guy that he's holding his own. I mean, I don't want to get into more about letting the fans base upon my opinions here, but it shows numbers never lie. Kyle Connor is here to play, and he wants to stay here. He plays very hungry. He plays a very exciting game, and when you add the word flashiness into Kyle Connor, it's not like a flashiness where it's like you're going to second guess him. So I don't know if you really build an organization around him, but he's got to be in your top 5.
He's got to be one of the pieces.
Yeah, he's got to be one of your pieces. Like the way this team likes Brian Little is almost like he could replace Brian Little from every angle. I think position wise, even though their positions may be different, but I just think he could fill that void, right?
Yeah.
Of Brian Little and not give him the headache of like the no clause or whatever that's in Brian Little's contract. So I think it would be easier to lock him up, let's say maybe for like that 7 to 8 year deal that maybe everybody wanted Jacob Trouba to get.
Yeah, it's got to be an 8 year. There's no question about it. We're not going to talk about a 1 or 2 year contract at $6 million. It seems to be the going rate of what they give every player, which would happen, and if they want him to prove himself. But he could potentially, like Laine, leave after that year and sign for somebody else for more money or less, or if he didn't want to be in Winnipeg. With his work ethic, it's got to be an 8 year, and I think we're looking around the 8 to 9
million. Yeah, I agree with you. He deserves it.
9 might be high, but if he's not going to sign for 8, fuck it, give him 9.
Give him 9. Why not?
There's no difference. That's basically you giving someone a non 2-way contract to make it's helping your AHL team. That doesn't matter. It's the Jets that matter.
And it strikes me that if you don't treat Kyle Connor well, like it'll leave a bitter taste in your mouth to see them walk away from this organization.
Yeah.
They loved him for a very long time. I hate to backtrack a little bit, but during the first 2 seasons at TSN, a lot of callers would call in and talk about Kyle Connor's college career.
Yeah.
They're like, this is the kid. They're like, are you following him in college or no? I was like, well, now I am, right? And it's like, you see why. You totally see why.
Yeah, he's liked here, and it's not about just saving the Jets money. Pay the kid. Make him stay. Make him feel like at home. I don't care if it has to be a $7 million and $2 million bonus of guaranteed a year. It's less of the cap on us, but I think the organization and owners have to step up and pay the man. He is our best left-handed player. We're talking about Wheeler, Scheifele, Laine. They're all right-handed. Bufflin, like our whole court, everyone is right-handed. So we need to start getting some lefties, especially on the power play. So even Roslovic coming up, he's right-handed. Like we need lefties in the organization. I think that's what kicks another mil on his contract. Ideally, 8 would be a perfect number, but it's going to be 9 because he's a lefty, his upside, the age. He's obviously one of the other main pieces we need to build. And I've never seen, I don't know, have you seen him on a line with Laine before?
No.
I don't think we've seen that.
Yeah, I haven't. And you know what? Wait for it. Wait till that happens. I mean, and it's almost one of those things. There's this joke that a lot of people say, it's like, oh, we never played together, we never worked together. And say, oh, well, the organization can't keep all the talent together, right? Yeah. You got to break it up a little bit. And maybe that's something that's going to hold true here.
Yeah.
That if you put those two together, could you imagine what would happen?
Well, even like we were talking last episode about Roslovic being probably one of the best passers on the team. If he can feed Laine the puck or Connor, like if he can adapt into that center role, like he can play wing no problem. He's grew up playing center his whole career, but like what we saw last year, he just didn't have maybe the positioning wasn't there, the whole face-offs. Like he's got work to do on the center. So to trust him at a second line center isn't really ideal this year, but a couple of years down the road, having Roslovic, Connor, and Laine on a line would be ridiculous. Like Roslovic should be feeding Laine the puck on the power play this year. We're going to see if it happens. If all else fails, put Roslovic out there, see what he can do. I think it'll be interesting to watch. But
this team develops a good set of chemistry. The possibilities could be endless. Maybe they might not have that deep playoff run as they had 2 seasons ago against the Las Vegas Golden Knights. But you know what? If they can create a load of chemistry, hey, let's see what it brings this year. We're going to take a quick break. Yeah, sorry about that. Pretty exciting for the year, but we're going to take a quick break here. This is Jets Fantasy Fuel. I'm Keith McKnight.
Blair on the air.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back to segment 3 here. We're going to jump right into some new changes with the amateur scout. Marcel Como retired. His last call was picking the Ville Hinola, and we just signed Jeff Henley as our amateur scout. He spent the last 7 years in Detroit. The last 3 years he was actually the chief scout. He drafted, developed Anthony Mantha, Dylan Larkin, I guess Tyler Bertuzzi, if you want to call out for that. Some amazing players there, and in the same way we play the Jets game here, a lot of gritty players that are fun to watch. They're hard to play against. They're little pests out there. So some good things coming here. Anything to say about that, Keith?
Yeah, really excited about that, Blair. You know, with Marcel Como stepping down, finally getting the opportunity to spend more time with his family as he was transitioning into smaller and lesser roles with the Winnipeg Jets scouting department over the last few years. So I'm really happy for him. Like you said, he had his last call there picking Ville Hinola in this year's past NHL entry draft just a few months ago. So really excited for what he's going to be doing, you know, in his post-scouting career. Jeff Finley spending 19 years in the show. That's pretty serious, you know, from 1987 to 2006 over a span of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams here, and noting a stop with the Winnipeg Jets 1.0 between 1994 and 1995. So he is familiar with the city. And like you said earlier, that, you know, familiarizing yourself with Winnipeg is probably going to be one of the biggest things. And I don't think Jeff Finley's going to have any issue there at all.
Yeah, 81 penalty minutes in the 95 season. I think you quoted 94, but same diffs there. Not a whole lot of points, but definitely a gritty player, and you can see it with who he's drafting right now. It's pretty exciting getting some new blood in here for sure.
Of course, and you can see that the Jets obviously want to, I want to say change the direction that they're in or going into, but they obviously want to take things in more aggressively. Let's just put it that way, because if you say change direction, it's like they've always been thinking of, you know, getting to the playoffs, staying in the playoffs, and going all the way. Yeah. So I think they just want to take on the direction that they're going to a little bit more aggressively now. Instead of having one hand on the wheel, now you can see two, and a little bit more foot on the gas now.
Yeah, and, you know, Detroit drafted some Swedes and Finns too, so I think they're on the same page about which direction we want to go to. Playing against those older boys there definitely helps, but a shorter season across season makes you know, across lands there, it's hard playing 40 games, you know, in Finland, Sweden, and then coming here and playing 82. So there is a little peak point of just conditioning that you got to work on in the off season, but definitely doable. Playing against the older guys helps out for sure. Transitioning, renewal of the ECHL affiliate
with the Jacksonville Icemen. Yes. Just a few seasons ago, the Jets did have a partnership with them, and they did not renew that contract. I'm not too sure what season that ended, but then they had a contract with the Tulsa Oilers, and then now that contract wasn't being renewed. So now going back with a team that they were familiar with, the Jacksonville Icemen. So it's nice to see that all the roots of development are there now for the Winnipeg Jets. So that if that's going to be their Eastern Conference Hockey League affiliate right now, hopefully that can pay some dividends to get some guys up here for the Manitoba Moose and have them there for, you know, a couple seasons and see if they can pan out in the NHL game.
Yeah, and I guess for you out there that doesn't really know what that has to do with the Winnipeg Jets, that's more of our Tier 2 rookies. We just signed people, they're not quite ready to play for the Moose. We'll probably send them there unless they're across seas and want to develop there, but having them closer to home developing here, it has a lot of benefits. And there's not much to say on it. It's a second tier. It's, you know, it's not the Moose, whatever, but we a place close to home where we can draft and develop there. So it's probably a good signing there.
Really good signing. And when you say draft and develop, that's exactly what that's really all about. If they can develop talent there and keep them, retain them, and keep them in the system.
Yeah. We gotta get back to the draft and developing. Speaking of, we signed a new heard that Marco Dano has not got a qualifying offer yet, so it's not looking like he'll be on the Moose next year or a couple
No.
games up. It's
Very sad to see that.
Yeah.
He's worked extremely hard. He took everything on the chin, being sent up, sent down, sent up, sent down. And even after some play with the Moose, that he was showing some aggressiveness on filling his stat sheet there, that you would think that, okay, well, maybe he would be able to play with the Winnipeg Jets. But it's almost like a player who just unfortunately fell through the cracks here with the Winnipeg Jets. And one thing that confused me with his experience is that he was with the Jets organization, went to Colorado, and then they put him on waivers, and the Jets picked him right back up 11 days later. So I was just like, oh, poor guy.
I think that was more of a system play of, if you want to just pick up our players. And like Colorado has been guilty of it. Anyone that sends anyone down, they're all over it. They pick up players left, right, and center. A lot of first round, second round picks that haven't panned out. They take a chance on it. That was before they signed all these off-season signings where they're at a point now where they don't have to do that. But teams, will take a chance on that. Yeah, it didn't pan out there, but they have all the talent. Obviously, they were been scouted and drafted in the first round for a reason. So it's unfortunate it didn't pan out. Just watching him personally, though, he'd give it his all. He'd try hard. He had a good shot. He had good talent. But at the end of the day, he just couldn't put it all together. And maybe that's just with the Winnipeg organization or the Colorado organization, whatever it was. It just seemed every role he was put into, he couldn't find his identity. He couldn't find what he brought to the table. Yeah, he has everything going from him. He can hit, he can score, he can shoot. He just didn't put it all together to a point where it's like, okay, this is my role and this is what I have to do. He, I think, tried doing everything, and that's why maybe the Jets dropped him. Colorado picked him up, played a few games there, dropped him as well to make room. It's just a back and forth segment where, like, I hope at the end of the day, like, as a beautiful player he is, that he finds his home, and maybe Vancouver will be calling as they're picking everyone up.
I hope so too. And when you say I hope, when you want him to find a home, it's got me thinking now too that why doesn't the Florida Panthers take a look on him?
Maybe, yeah.
Like, that's another team that when you explain something to me about, like, empty seats, it's like, the NHL has to pay for that. Yeah. So can you imagine how many seats are not being filled that the league has to pick up in Florida? So I don't know. Maybe he was one of those players that could create a winning culture down there.
Maybe, and obviously Bobrovsky going down there helps. So I think it'll help with the league a bit with a few of the signings. I've had Barkov on my fantasy forever, so I think he's got a big year coming up.
I know you're a fan. You talk very highly of him. Yeah, he's a nice guy to watch.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
We'll see which way they go with that. But either way, Florida's on the up. I have them making playoffs. So we're going to talk about that in our next episode, who the winners are from the off-season trades. And I have Florida on the top of the winners for sure. Bobrovsky is a pretty good pickup considering their goalie situation the last couple of years.
Yeah, they've had some interesting things going down there in the Sunshine State of Florida.
But they got the no tax rule.
No tax, yeah.
Players are willing to sign for more down there, so I'd take a chance on Dano down there. Or, personally, I'd like him to come to a Canadian team, hoping that he has a second wave in him. But he's young. He's got full potential.
Full potential, yeah.
We'll just see what happens with that. But no room on the lineup here, which is a good thing for you Jets fans.
Yeah, there is no. I like that. Yeah, that's a good point. But one thing that we did want the viewers here to have put in their minds, especially Blair, is how many points now that the Winnipeg Jets will be losing with the departure of Tyler Myers, Ben Sherratt, and I believe who was the third one with a total of, I believe it was 150 something points.
I have a few players here for the little math I made up here. I got Myers, Tanev, Trouba, Sherratt, Hayes, Lemieux. Anyone basically with more than 10 games that have played this season that are relevant to our stats sheet. And basically, we got 154 points to make up for it. 50 goals and 104 assists. And with the signings we've had, I don't think we're anywhere close to it. So it's more of a, Shifley said in a recent interview, it's more of a people stepping up kind of thing, and it's got to happen. With the rookies, everyone, I think if everyone doesn't step up, it's going to be the same thing as last year. It's just that whatever, we're strong some games, we lose some games. It's a half-heart mentality that you could see last year, that it's just, we didn't give it the all. 154 points is either us as players, making up for it, or our goalie stepping up a little more. We can't blame the goalie or put him under the water, so I don't want to just be like, oh, Hellebuck has to play better. It's the team around him. Our power play last year, everyone was just scrambling to the point where Matt Hendricks came back and was just basically like, what's going on here? Are we playing a system? Are we running around? It's like, I think, like, what are we actually doing out here? And it's hard because as a goalie, if you're, Pecorine, you're Nashville, they have a system down where it's like, yeah, he's huge, whatever, he's been around, he's got the talent and experience, but he knows where the shot's coming from because the D let that shot come from there. So it's like when we're scrambling around and the goalie has no clue where we're shooting. So I think we have to play into Hellebuck's style.
More of a structured offense, right? Yeah. And structured defense as well. Yeah. Okay.
If we can play into him, it's going to be a different story. Same with the power play. But yeah, at the end of the day, 154 points to make up for is pretty hefty without any off-season huge signings. So we're in for a little surprise. I hope it's a good surprise, as in our Vasi and Appleton and a few people stepping up. But it's going to be an interesting season for sure with those points missing for sure. But
oh, that is a hard fact of life, let alone reality, that the fans, let alone the team, are going to have to wrap their head around, because who really, like, you can't depend on what's coming in to fill that void. You really can't. What's already there, oh geez, like their work. Well, you can, right? But
honestly, though, we have, out of all the teams in the league, we do have one of the better younger cores.
Okay.
It's more so just people stepping up to what they can do at the times they need to.
Yes, and that's what I'm scared about. That's where I was going with that. Because, like, can you depend upon, like, can these guys to carry the workload right now? And there's a lot of work here.
Players are defense, so it's like we signed Bellio to a 1 year, $1 million. He's a good stay at home. You can trust him. He works good with the coach. He's good for the system. But if like on the power play too, like it's like Trouba's got 50 points you got to replace. Myers had 30. Myers had 31. Sherratt had 20. It's not a lot, but those are points we got to make up for the blue line. Where it's like if Buff or certain players, Morrissey had some injury factors, that it's like we have to get some of these players to step up, where I don't know if the offense is there. So I feel like if the coaches know this going into the year, it's like, yeah, we got to change our system. We got to play more of a defensive kind of system, especially if Laine isn't hitting on the power play, which I have him for this year. I think he's a bounce back candidate. I think he's going to have a strong off season, not playing in playoffs. He's going to have more time to train. I feel good about the off season, but some of the dressing room stuff that's going on, it's we're in a weird place right now, especially with the core. It's young, but we have all the players we rely on pretty old. They're 30s above, right? So it's gonna be an interesting year for sure. But if you liked what we're talking about.